Remember that they're changing my voice. Now, what the Nazis are to Adolf Hitler is what the Klan historically is to the governing class. Now, they aren't all a big fan of it. Just like, feudal lords in Europe weren't necessarily a big fan of the process of torturing people, but it's part of their process. So when I came across a video about what lynchings were by an older white lady, she brought up that they were a ritualized form of terror and horror in order to kind of reinforce white supremacy. Now, I can't stress enough, you should only fear God. You shouldn't think to yourself, well, what will happen to my family? Did Abraham think of that about Isaac? No, Abraham was willing to sacrifice Isaac. In the story, did God think about that? Think of that in regards to Christ? No. God didn't hesitate to sacrifice Christ and others as well. John the Baptist, Stephen the Martyr, what have you. Okay. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about how lightning struck a house in Michigan during the recent lightning storm and why that's symbolic. Now, the governing class controls the weather. I always tell the truth about these things, okay? And that was symbolic of them saying, yes, people do get punished for not obeying God in reality. And we need to understand the difference between, Prince Harry and Prince William and King Charles as idols in the system. Maybe Einstein, maybe Tesla, maybe Donald Trump, maybe people who are models who are more famous than others, maybe entertainers, okay, various academics, sometimes politicians. They are false idols, right? The Pope is a false idol. Now, the Pope seems like a pretty nice guy sometimes. He says some things that are important to say, but he's still a false idol. And it's important to know that. So how do we understand when people, for example, in a relationship are wrong? We need to look at how far are they from the ideal person? Now, is everyone expected to be ideal? No. Is everyone expected to be ideal and perfect? No, but they are expected to try with all their heart to be as holy and righteous and perfect as they can, right? Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Matthew 5. So try to be perfect, right? The greatest commandment is loving God with all your heart. So when we see people putting out false idols and covering up who I am and how I naturally am, okay, they're creating a system where people don't try with all their hearts to be perfect. So they're breaking the divine law of God. They're breaking the commandments. Now, some people might think, hey, you're different than I am. Maybe it's a female, maybe it's a gay person, maybe a different race, maybe they're all black and I'm mulatto, whatever the case may be. Okay, maybe they're a Muslim, maybe they're a Jew. They say this guy's different. What will happen if people see this guy's ideal? What will happen is eventually they'll get over it. What happened to all those white races when Michael Jordan became famous? A lot of them became Michael Jordan fans. They eventually got over it. What happened in regards to Martin Luther King Day? Eventually, they got over it. And the people who didn't get over it are so crazy. Why would you do things based on the most crazy demographic in society and what they think and what they want and what they wish? It's pretty straightforward, right? So I have a lot to do, so I have to rush through these videos. So see, part of it was torture. It was ritualized. It was a community event, a family affair. They also took souvenirs. That's why they caused me to have to leave California so fast. And they made it so my parents refused to kind of incrementally pack up so that a lot of stuff would be left behind. My older brother played a role in making sure that they didn't put some of my stuff like my sparring gear into storage so they could take souvenirs for their satanic ritual event. So this is a modern day version of the lynchings. And the lynchings, right, remember the Klan is like a church organization. They knew that they were playing the role of, the Jews and the Romans in the Bible who screened out the other Jews and anyone else in the area, right, who refused to take on the satanic culture of the Greeks and Romans. That recently Gavin Newsom was, on the news or, on YouTube, praising the Greco-Roman cultures that screened out Christ and anyone who would follow him in their story. And in their story, as part of their mock ritual, they superimpose themselves and their families on the heroes in the story and has various effects, various psychological effects.